Ladies and gentlemen, the deepest and most vital secrets on our planet are not easily discovered. Too many protective layers are in place for the whole of the truth to be revealed. What is really happening on our planet? And indeed, what is happening off our planet, using the money that has been extracted from our taxes and using wealth drained from us in secret? Many rumors have come to light recently about the existence of a secret space program. Clues and hints pop up through cracks in the walls of secrecy. We need to listen carefully to piece them together. Do you remember a great and groundbreaking film called 2001: A Space Odyssey? This was Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece. In it, there may be some great clues to the space programs that were planned and may have even been underway during his time. The film was released in 1968, and production on it was begun many years earlier, in 1964 and 1965. That's certainly enough time to make a great film, but it also gives time to use the sets and innovative production techniques in other ways besides. Many were struck with wonder because in the film they saw the possibilities of a bright human future in space. Yet by the time the real year of 2001 came along, we had fallen so very short of the promise of the film. Or had we? Some think that the U.S. was already in space years before the film was made. In fact, we may have been in space, fully cooperating with the Russians, in 1965. Perhaps too much was at stake for our government to tell us the whole truth of our involvement in space. To keep money flowing for space programs, the Cold War itself may have been a staged production. What better way to keep the tax money flowing for expensive space equipment than to fake a Cold War? A war where few were killed, but military spending kept escalating. This may have seemed wonderful for those who were then in charge. Listen to some excerpts here from a recent early December episode of Coast to Coast, wherein host Jimmy Church spoke with filmmaker Jay Weidner about Stanley Kubrick. Weidner believes that Kubrick was hired by the U.S. government to make a film faking the landing of the Apollo spacecraft on the moon. Now, why would they do that? Well, Weidner believes it was to make sure that nothing would go wrong. A pre-filmed landing could be made to go exactly to script. A real landing, perhaps involving much more advanced technology, and maybe even some help from ETs, that's one possibility that has been entertained by some, would then not need to be shown to the public. So here's Jay Weidner sharing his views.
Technically even possible. So I try to have an open mind listening to you, Jay, or anybody else that presents this, because I'm trying to figure out the truth.
Well, here's the thing. We know that we know from Joseph Farrell's work, and we know from the T. Townsend Brown's work that they had these thruster engines, basically two capacitors that would be working with each other with opposite charges that would allow anti-gravity. There's no doubt about it. It works. It works in a vacuum. They had it, and they're not going to just sit on it. It's huge. So they are operating way, many, many years ahead of us. That's what I'm here to tell you. And I think Kubrick was fascinated by this. Robert Temple, the writer who knew Kubrick, he told me that Kubrick was fascinated by the Germans and their technology, and that's what the Germans were working on, was this anti-gravity propulsion equipment. And I think they had it by the mid-40s, and I think that they had fantastic machines. I know they did by the 40s. And so I think the whole rocket thing is just a cover. And I think both the Soviet Union and the United States had parallel high.
Let's go to Mike in Kentucky on the wild card line. Mike, welcome to Coast AM.
Hello. In the early 70s, I worked at Rockwell International, and I had a top secret security clearance, and I hand carried some wiring diagrams over to another building, and the guy had to come out and sign for him, and he didn't want to come out, so I went back where he was. I guess it was okay because I had the security clearance. And he had two vehicles in there they were working on. They were like much smaller versions of the space shuttle, had skids on them and vectoring nozzles in the front and in the back, about the size of a full-size Dodge pickup or maybe a little bit bigger. And I asked him what they were for, and he said they were for the lunar program. And I said, how long had they been making them? And he said, about 5 years. And I said, how many had they made? And he said, 20 of them.
What year was this, Mike?
It was in 74.
Interesting. Okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I didn't catch the date.
That's all. That's basically all. I mean, you know, there's a few odd things like that I've seen there, like the high mat they had there, and the one they show in the books don't look anything alike. The one that they had there didn't have any wings on it; just looked like a triangle with the tip cut off.
Well, I'm gonna, Jay's probably wanting to ask this question, so I'll ask it for Jay. What did you think you were seeing?
I really thought I was seeing some new phase of maybe, something they were going to use in the space program. And that's when I asked the guy that, and he just told me it was for the lunar program and that they had been making them for 5 years when I asked him how long they'd been making them. I thought it was something new.
Interesting.
It wasn't in any of their intercompany publications. Some things they put in their intercompany publications, but other things they didn't, of course.
Jay, what do you make of that? Jay, did we lose you? Do we lose Jay?
Are you kidding me?
Oh, there you are, Jay. Okay.
I'll tell you something. Somebody's messing with us because not only I'm getting all sorts of interference from you guys on this end. So just so you know.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay,
so
that's
anyway,
fair enough.
I actually believe the caller, absolutely 100%. And I believe that we had an active lunar program going probably by the mid-'60s. And I've talked to artists who work in aerospace, and they've told me that they were designing stuff in the late 60s, descriptions very close to what this guy was just saying. And they didn't know why they were being asked to draw these things, but it was clear that they were part of some kind of concept program. And I think they have technology. I know they have technology that goes way, way, way beyond what we have. And I think it's really time for that technology to be released.
They didn't appear to have any other, like, motive engines in them. They just had vectored thrust nozzles in the front and the back, but I couldn't see anything else to propel them.
Well, there was one thing, not one thing, there was many things, but there was one thing about Stanley that we can't lose sight of. He started production with Arthur C. Clarke and the development of the movie in 1964, 1963, 64, 65. Yep. At that time, you had Attack of the Flying Saucers. That was what was projected out there from Hollywood, but also our general idea of what was going on. Yeah, we had Mercury in development, Gemini, but what we didn't have was the vision at that time that happened in 2001. That was in fact, it never even really happened. It was so far, that we know of, so far ahead of itself. The space shuttle that was there, that docked in the opening scene of the movie. If you think about that, that was so visionary. And Mike is talking about seeing it in 74, where they had sketches of a space shuttle in 1965.
Well, I think that's right. I think Stanley knew that there was a secret space program, and that was the whole point of the obscuration of it with making the Apollo stuff. So, you could actually say that the Apollo fakery was designed to hide the real stuff, and and Stanley was part of it, and I really believe this because I've heard it from so many people, not just the caller there. I've heard it from a lot of people that there is amazingly advanced technologies, that we have bases on the moon, bases on Mars. We're easily able to travel between the two using not rockets, but very advanced portal technology, and they have, I'm telling you, they have thrusters that work in a vacuum that can get up to 40% of the speed of light, and we already have it. Ben Rich, the guy who headed Skunk Works for Lockheed Martin, said before he died that we have the technology to get ET home right now, and this was 20 years ago.
Thank you for the call, and I want you to have a great, safe weekend, Mike. Thank you so much. Let's go